Hey everybody, you are going to love this recipe today. I have a quick, homemade, totally gluten-free, cheap, fast, easy, delicious pizza recipe. Welcome to my kitchen, everybody. I'm Elizabeth, and I am a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach specializing in functional medicine. And I love to help people figure out how they can manage their chronic diseases, especially autoimmune conditions, with diet and lifestyle. That's functional medicine. And I love to cook and eat really delicious food. That's a big part of that process for me. Managing my disease naturally, having really great tasting food that I enjoy, that my whole family enjoys, a husband, 2 teenagers, is really important, and that was a critical piece in the puzzle for me, figuring out how to manage my disease naturally. So when I hit upon a good recipe that we all love, and it's not too labor intensive, it's not too expensive, it doesn't take a bunch of weird ingredients, we are all in, and I want to share that recipe with you. So this recipe I have for you today is called Crazy Crust Pizza, and it is super, super simple. I've got a lot of trays out. I'm not making this much pizza, and I'll explain this to you as we go. So first I'm going to make my crust, which is sort of like a batter, like a pancake batter almost. It's even a little thinner than a pancake batter. That is why it's called Crazy Crust, because it's crazy. Now I have lots of paleo pizza recipes on my website. I have a pizza bowl, and also here on the YouTube channel that is like all the great flavors of pizza just without the crust. We have pizza popover, which is like all the yummy pizza stuff on the bottom, and then the crust is on top. On my website, which is autoimmunefreecookingclub.com, I'll have that down in the notes. There is paleo pizza crust, there's a gluten-free pizza crust, and then we have this one called Crazy Crust. So we put 2 eggs in the bowl, and I need 2/3 of a cup of milk. So I'm using almond milk because I had some almond milk open. If I had a can of coconut milk that was open, I would have used that. Basically, to keep this as healthy as possible for my family, and honestly myself, I have the most particular stomach. I'm going to use a dairy-free milk. Now I am going to put cheese on top of my pizza, and so you might think, why are you putting cheese on if you are not using milk, or why would you not just use regular milk? I find that myself and most people can tolerate some dairy. Like if you can tolerate some dairy, you can tolerate, you know, this much, maybe this much, maybe this much, and maybe certain types like grass-fed butter, grass-fed cheese, really fine for my body. But when I start eating a lot of milk, or if I have ice cream, that sort of thing, that's where I tend to get into trouble. So I'm not going to use cow milk in my crust, but I am going to put some yummy cow cheese on top. But this pizza is so delicious, and you know, depending on the toppings you use, you could totally leave out the cheese. It would be completely fine. So I have my eggs, my milk. I need a teaspoon of salt. This is just this pink Himalayan salt. It has some minerals in it and tastes good. I want a little bit of pepper, about 1/8 of a teaspoon, but it doesn't really matter. Just put in however much you like. And then I have some basil and oregano. And again, you really don't have to measure this. You want about a teaspoon total. So I'm going to do about a 1/2 teaspoon of each one. If you have the spice or the herb blend called Italian seasoning, that is totally fine too. If you don't like these flavors, you can leave it out. We love oregano and basil. In fact, I have some fresh oregano outside. I see it. I should have snipped some of that, but I didn't. So that's okay. So super liquidy so far, and now I have to add a cup of flour. So we are gluten-free, mostly paleo in this house. This is just a gluten-free recipe. So paleo is grain-free. Gluten-free is just no gluten, that particular protein that's found in wheat, barley, and rye. And this is my homemade gluten-free flour mix. Some things I just like a gluten-free instead of paleo. This is one of those. So I need a cup of flour. If you're not gluten-free, you just found me for some other reason, I'm glad that you're here. And you can use a cup of whatever kind of flour you like. I have only tried this with my gluten-free flour recipe, which is on the website. I'll link it below. Because it's such a simple recipe, I would be really surprised if it doesn't just work perfectly well with any of the gluten-free flour mixes on the market. The difference between mine and those, mine is primarily potato starch. It does have some rice flour, arrowroot, sorghum, and most of the traditional ones you find in the store, not traditional, but commercial gluten-free flours you'll find in the store are going to be primarily rice flour, and they will almost always contain xanthan gum or some other gums and stabilizers, and so I don't have any of that in my homemade version. I use a collagen powder instead, and it works beautifully. I have used this for quite a number of recipes, and it works really well. So I highly recommend my own version, or just find another version on the web, but of course I think mine is the best. Okay, so now we have this super liquidy batter. I mean, it's really thin. It's thinner even than pancake batter, I think. And it will make, I know my pans are super, super old, but they are great and they last forever. So mine have just been stained from many, many years of use. You can just make one great big pizza like this. I think this is 15 by 11. This is your typical sheet pan, just sometimes called a jelly roll pan. So this would be, I think this one is the half sheet pan. Don't quote me on that. And this is the quarter. So you put 2 of these in here. But I only have one of these. And I have picky children. So I'm going to make individual ones tonight. You know what, I might just do these 2 because that's going to stretch that one a little too thin. So you could just spray your pan with some kind of oil. This is an avocado oil spray. There are lots of versions of this on the internet, and some of them said to grease and flour your pan. I don't think that's necessary, but I use nonstick foil because it just makes my cleanup really easy, or you could use parchment. Either one would work. And then I'm just spraying it with the avocado. So I'm just using my rubber spatula to make sure I have it everything incorporated well. Pour about half of it in that pan, about half of it in this pan. You actually want a pretty thin layer. If you like a thicker crust, you can use a smaller pan and you won't spread the batter as thin and you will end up with a thicker crust. It's totally fine. We happen to like a thinner crust. Back in the day when we used to order pizza from Papa John's and those other places, we always ordered the thin crust. So one problem with my very old pans is that most of them are warped. This one is newer, so it's not warped as much. It is a teeny bit. And so you might find that your crust wants to sort of grow toward the middle. But it's okay. Just push it out. It might not completely fill the corners. It'll be all right. This one is a teeny bit bigger than that other one, so I'll just put a teeny bit more. And then you're going to put on your meat, if you're going to use any meat ingredients, and anything like super hearty. We like a lot of vegetables on our pizza, my husband and I do, but we don't like them crunchy, or I guess I should say I don't like them crunchy, or my body doesn't like them crunchy. I need the vegetables to be cooked pretty well. So I cook my vegetables ahead of time, so I don't need to put them on at this stage. But you want to put your meat on. Your meat will side, or your other large ingredients. Like if you wanted to put on bell pepper and you didn't want to cook it first, you could just chop it up and put it on now. So like your bigger, heartier ingredients you're going to put on with your raw crust, which I know it's crazy, hence the name. I don't quite need this much, but you know what, I have it cooked, so I'll put a little bit more on my son's side. He would always take more meat. Okay, and then pepperoni. We all want pepperoni. This person, I had this sliced at the deli at Whole Foods, and she sliced it super thick, which sometimes they do that because, you know, if I ask for a pound of something, if they slice it super thick, they don't have to make as many slices. But I don't like it when they do that because that's not the way I want it, you know. Anyway, so because they were so big, I kind of chopped these up. Did you understand what I was saying about the vegetables? We like our vegetables softer, more cooked. And so because of that, I will put them on after this initial baking. So just kind of spread out your, you know, your heartier ingredients that you want to put on now. And then this goes in a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. 400 degrees, 20 minutes. Before you stick it in, just kind of, you know, tilt your pan a little bit, make sure it's all spread out evenly, and in it goes. So I said 20 minutes for that crust, but you're going to want to keep an eye on it. I would set your timer for 15 minutes and then check it because depending on the size pan you used, it will determine how thick or thin your crust is, and so it may cook a little bit faster. This isn't the final cooking, so you don't want it completely brown and crispy like you want your finished product. You want it to have a little bit of space to cook some more. You're basically wanting to set it, and I'll show you that when I pull mine out. I'm going to get things set up for the next phase once I get those crusts out of the oven. So I just put my little trivets or, you know, pot holders here ready for those pans. So one of the things I really love about making pizza at home is that you can totally control the ingredients. So if you're trying to follow a gluten-free diet or an anti-inflammatory diet for any reason, you can order gluten-free pizza from a restaurant, but it's just almost guaranteed to have cross-contamination unless it's a 100% gluten-free restaurant, which I know they have in some parts of the country. And I love to travel and I love to dream about traveling, and so I read a lot of I read a lot of travel blogs, and I'll follow a couple people that are gluten-free. And it seems like in Europe and other parts of the world, there are lots of completely gluten-free restaurants and bakeries and ice cream shops and that kind of thing. We just don't have a lot of that here. But I love making sure, if I'm going to make it at home, I know it's going to be gluten-free and I don't have to worry about that. We just don't even have any gluten in our house, period. And the other thing is that I can control the quality of the ingredients, and we get to customize. So, you know, when you go out for pizza in a restaurant, you know, if everybody in the family wants something different, you've got to either split, you know, can you split that for us? You know, half with this ingredient, half with that. Or order, you know, 4 little pizzas, and that gets really expensive, and so it's just so much easier to do it at home. And you saw how easy that crust was. It was milk and eggs, flour, and seasonings. So that is super, super inexpensive. For my family of 4 to eat pizza in a restaurant is going to cost us close to $100. $100 for pizza, that's just crazy. So when I first made this recipe, it was the beginning of quarantine time. I hadn't been to the grocery store for a little while, and I saw this recipe online. I thought, that is intriguing. I want to try that. I had just made a batch of my gluten-free flour, and so I was like, we're going to have that. But I didn't have any pizza sauce, and so I just want to tell you how I made our homemade pizza sauce. So I did have tomato paste. One time I was just cruising down the aisle at Whole Foods, and they had these jars of tomato paste on sale for a good price, and so I bought several of them because we do go through a lot of tomato paste. So I had this in my cupboard, and you know, I was telling you about all the different versions of pizza recipes that I have on my website. Well, pizza popover, the one that's like an upside down pizza, was something that my grandmother cooked for me. So when we were little, we lived in Ohio. That's where my grandparents lived. That's where my family's from. And we spent a lot of time with my grandparents. They lived on a farm. It was fun. You know, we loved it out there. My parents owned a restaurant, and so they worked very long hours. So we ate a lot of meals with my grandparents, and Grandma was a great cook. She loved to cook. She found a lot of joy in it. She was good at it. Which if you're a new cook and you're trying to just kind of find your way in the kitchen, I think it helps if you love it. You know, find some way to learn to love cooking. I just love it in general, but I look forward to it as kind of like my downtime at the end of my workday. And I'll watch a TV show on Netflix that I love, or I'll listen to some favorite music or a podcast. Which podcasts, I know there are a lot of really entertaining ones. The ones I listen to are kind of educational, but I love that because I love learning. So find some way to love cooking, and then I think you'll become a better cook. But anyway, sorry, this is a long rabbit trail. We've been in quarantine, right? I haven't been able to talk to other people very much lately, so I'm talking to you. So Grandma loved to read cooking magazines and that sort of thing, and she was a great sort of down-home country cook that didn't use recipes. And then on the other hand, she loved to try new recipes. So she found this recipe for pizza popover, and she convinced my brother and I to eat it by just telling us it was upside-down pizza, because just like all children, we were suspicious of any food that was different. Well, anyway, we loved it. It became one of our favorites. Well, pizza popover, you basically make this tomato and meat sauce, and the seasoning in it is McCormick thick and zesty spaghetti sauce mix. And that's the way I made it for years and years and years and years. And then we switched this paleo diet, 8, 9 years ago. And I was like, I can't use this because the first ingredient in it is sugar. Then it's tomato powder, tapioca starch, which we use tapioca starch. It's modified tapioca starch, so how are they modifying it? Well, we don't really know what that means. Salt, onion powder, then there's cornstarch. Spices including, and they tell us what some of the spices are, but they don't tell us what all the spices are. Corn, maltodextrin, xanthan gum, malic acid, which is a preservative, but not good for your gut. Xanthan gum, not good for your gut. Like, okay, we can't use this anymore. So I just opened up a packet of it and I started tasting it, and I made up my own spice blend. So the pizza popover recipe, which is here on YouTube, I'll link to that video, or maybe we'll put one of the little cards up in the corner so you can click on that one. It uses basil and oregano and all that kind of stuff out of your spice cupboard instead of this packet. But because I used to make this a lot, we had several packets of this spice blend in the cupboard. And can I tell you, I'm looking at this one, best by August of 2019. I would not have bought this any more recently than 7 or 8 years ago. So that tells you how long this stuff lasts. Anyway, I had no pizza sauce, but I had tomato paste, and I saw this, and I thought, first of all, I should have thrown that away out of my cupboard a long time ago, but I didn't. And we are having a pandemic, and I don't want to be wasteful. I'm going to use it. I'm just going to use it. Just a little bit. It's going to be fine. And you know what? It was fine. I'm very particular with what I put in my body, and I don't eat a lot of this kind of stuff, and I do think if your gut is healed, you can tolerate some not so great ingredients. If you're in a situation where maybe your autoimmune disease is flaring, you can't have even just a little bit of some of these irritating ingredients. So I mixed up tomato paste. It was about maybe a third of this packet. I'm just basing it on how much is left in here. About a third of this packet. And then I added water to get it to the consistency of pizza sauce, And it tasted really good. And I felt good about not wasting anything, about being creative. So, that whole long story, other than just to talk to somebody, is to tell you that desperate times call for desperate measures. It's okay. It's okay if you have some old stuff in your cupboard to use it up. Maybe use it up judiciously. Like, I'm not going to cook with this every day for a couple weeks. I do believe that gluten is a big offender with autoimmune disease, so if you have some gluten foods in your cupboard, give those away. The food pantries need food right now. There are people who can eat that and it doesn't affect their health. But if you have an autoimmune disease, then gluten affects your health, whether you realize it or not. So I would not make any exceptions with gluten. But other stuff like this, use it a little bit at a time. Try not to be wasteful. And the next time you're at the store, buy some pizza sauce, which is what I did. Or you know what, I could have simply added in my own spices. That would have not been a problem. I just happened to see this. It was in the same cupboard as the tomato paste. I was like, you know, I really should use that stuff or throw it out. So anyway, there's that story. This pizza sauce is good. It's the 365 organic brand. And it doesn't have any offending ingredients. It's just tomatoes and olive oil and spices and that sort of thing. One more thing I wanted to show you. Have you heard that you can just grow your own celery from what's left? You know, the root. So I went to the grocery store a week ago. I bought enough, hopefully, to not have to go for a month. I pretty much know I'm going to have to get some produce, but I would love to not have to get anything more than just a little bit of produce. And I do have some canned fruits and vegetables. I have some like applesauce in a jar, that kind of thing. So maybe, and I have spinach growing in my garden right now. There's a possibility I can hold out for a month and not have to go to the store. And when I was at Whole Foods, that's where I usually buy my organic celery because theirs is the nicest. I knew that I had one brand new head of celery at home that I hadn't, started using yet. I was like, do I get another one? It's one of those ingredients that sometimes I use it a ton and sometimes I hardly use it at all. And I just, because I'm not making a meal plan and going to the grocery store, I'm going to the grocery store and then making a meal plan based on what I was able to find. I didn't have a plan for how much celery I was going to use. Well, I used up that whole head of celery in the first week. And I got to the end and I thought, I've read somewhere that you can grow your own celery. Just stick it in a glass of water. So I did. So this has been in this glass of water since Monday or Tuesday. Today's Friday, so at most 5 days. And look at it. It does have the leaves growing. It was just flat across because I just chop. So the center is growing and this little one right next to it is growing and out here on the side is growing. So I thought that it might develop roots at the bottom and then I was supposed to plant it. I haven't looked into this yet. If you do this and you know how to do this, tell me. And if it works for you, I'm just thinking never-ending celery would be awesome. So I just wanted to show you. I'm super excited that it at least has the little leaves. Hey, if we totally run out of other produce, we can eat celery leaves. Wouldn't that be nutritious and very filling? All right, so my crust has been in the oven for 12 minutes. I'm just going to flip my trays around and check on it. I'm going to show you this one right now because it's super easy to see it. Can you see how it is it's set? It is sort of like a pancake. It doesn't taste at all like a pancake and it'll get crispy, but it's completely set. We could stop at this point and put on the sauce and other ingredients, but I'm going to let it go for a few more minutes. Okay, so at this point you just finish your pizza with whatever you like. If you don't like sauce, don't put on sauce. If you love sauce, put on extra sauce. If you just want if you wanted this to be like a flatbread that was less messy to serve as sort of like an appetizer, you could just stop right now. Well, I would cook it for a few more minutes till it really got crispy and brown. And then you could just cut it into little bite-sized pieces and then you have like a nice little appetizer. It's super duper flexible. But we're having pizza tonight. It's Friday night. I don't know about you, but with all this quarantine and just the stress of kind of the unknown with things right now, I am loving the weekend. When you work at home, work from home, and I already homeschool my kids. The weekends were never really that different, but I've been so busy lately, and I don't know. I just think there's this kind of underlying level of stress. I really am loving my weekends. So this is a combination of onion and mushrooms. It's about a half of one of those packages of brown cremini mushrooms and one yellow bell pepper. And that's a lot of toppings. Sometimes, do I load it up? I think I'll just load it up. If I cook extra vegetables like this, I have a little more than I needed, I will sometimes save them and use them for like an egg scramble. They're really great for that. But this crust just will hold up to that, that amount of toppings, and I'm just going to load it up. So I have, there's my timer. So I set it for 20 minutes and I pulled it out a little bit early. By using these two pans, the crust is a little thinner than it would normally be. This is a combination of Monterey Jack and Parmesan. So another thing that I found is that the more aged cheeses agree with my body better. So that means no to mozzarella and yes to Parmesan and Monterey Jack. I know my husband's going to want a little bit more cheese than that, so I'm going to grate a little bit more. And then I'm just going to finish this off with a little sprinkle of garlic powder. That's probably good. I got a little bit more on the kids. What can I say? We're cheesy people. Garlic powder. Not garlic salt. You could do garlic salt, but I think the sausage is salty, the pepperoni is salty. That sauce, I don't know how salty that sauce is, but the meats are salty, so just a little bit of the garlic powder would be great. All right, and back in the oven they go. And remember, the pans are hot. So the kids' pizza with just the not as many toppings will cook a whole lot faster than mine and my husband's that has all those vegetables on top. There was just this lone piece of provolone in there. Yeah, it wasn't sealed up, so that's kind of dried out. So I'm going to throw that away. I've been trying to teach everybody to just clean up as you go. Like I have one child who will take the last apple or the last clementine out of the bag and just leave the empty bag in the fridge. No, clean it up. So I saw that kind of peeking open and I thought, let's just clean that up. All right, I'll see you back here in a few minutes with some yummy pizza. All right, the pizza is done. Does this look good or what? It smells really good. Okay, so let me give you a little tip for cutting pizza. So this particular crust, is liquidy. You have to bake it in a pan that has sides. So then you have to cut the pizza. So you have your pizza cutter, which works really great. This is the Pampered Chef one from back in the day. It's really sharp. It has these little guards to protect your hand. But the problem is you get to like right here and it hits the edge of your pan, and so it doesn't cut all the way through. So you've gotten your pizza cutter dirty. You have to wash it, and it didn't really do the full job. So back in the drawer you go. When I make a lot of types of homemade pizza, I'll use my kitchen scissors, which are nice and sharp, and these are J.A. Hinkle's, I believe. This is a really good pair. And you can cut and you can really get in all the sides. Wonderful. This is my first choice most of the time. When you have this cute little manageable sized pizza and you've cooked it on a piece of foil or parchment, if you just let it cool, so this one's been out of the oven about 8 minutes. I told you it wouldn't take as long to cook because there weren't as many toppings on it. You can just pull that out of your pan, put it on your cutting board, and use your big, sharp chef's knife. And that is by far the fastest and easiest way to cut your pizza. Cut it in any size, shape you like. You have little kids, you want to go ahead and cut it into bite-sized pieces. It's no problem. Somebody insists that all pizza has to be triangular. You cut a couple triangle pieces. You could put that on the kid's plate and make it butterflies. Do you know what I mean? Did you ever do that when you were little? Did your mom maybe do that for you? Ooh, it's still really hot. So you turn them so the triangles are, in, so it looks like a little butterfly. And that's it. That's our Crazy Crust Pizza. Oh, here it is. This is a little hot. It needs to cool just a teeny bit, but it makes a really nice crust that you can actually pick up. For those people that insist that you have to eat pizza with your hands, fine. You can eat the pizza with your hands. It's no problem. It holds together. I can tell you, as someone who has orthodontia right now. I can't bite into like a really hard pizza crust. Our favorite store-bought gluten-free pizza is the one from Costco, and they taste really great. We love them. That one actually doesn't make me sick. But the crust gets so hard that it's really difficult for me to bite it. I end up having to cut it into bites like you would do for a toddler, and having to eat it that way, which is not the most fun. So this crust, it holds up, it tastes really great, it's cheap, it's fast, it's easy, and I can eat it. So if you have somebody in your house with sore teeth, or maybe an older person who might not have as many teeth, this is a great pizza for a lot of reasons. I highly recommend it. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoy this recipe. All the information will be down in the notes below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, hitting that little bell icon, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you, where you're from, how you're doing, why you're here. And I welcome you back next time. All right, thanks everybody.